Put your hand up if you like paying more tax. Well, here we go again. Another year, another new tax for Canadians. All right, if you've been renting your property out as a short term, like an Airbnb or a Verbo thing, and you want to go back to long-term tenancy, there's a problem that you need to know about. Let's just rewind for a second and understand why you would even consider going short-term rental to begin with. The Landlord and Tenant Board, which governs the entire framework of landlord and tenant relationships in Ontario, doesn't give a lot of feels to landlords. If you're a landlord, you probably have realized that there's been a power shift and the dynamic really supports tenants. Non-paying tenants are nearly impossible to evict. There's now extortion happening. It's a really ugly scene if you get the wrong tenant in a property. Not saying all landlords are good. That's not true. However, the risk is great, undeniably, if you are a landlord in Ontario in this climate, when you're dealing with the Landlord and Tenant Board. Well, how do you avoid going with the Landlord and Tenant Board? Well, some landlords are saying, I will avoid going long-term, go to a different direction, short-term, which doesn't involve governance by the Landlord and Tenant Board. So here you go. You want to go list it on Airbnb. Okay, what happened with listing it on Airbnb? It was thought that the meteoric rise in house prices and the meteoric rise in rents had to do with limited supply of available units to rent for tenants. And so Canada, in its infinite wisdom, decided what they were going to do was start making it punitive for people to list their places on Airbnb rather than go through the traditional Landlord and Tenant Board exposed climate. In so doing, the landlord wants to limit the risk. It makes sense to me. The government got involved and tried to paint that as the boogeyman for rising rents. So they said was, all right, if you want to do that, you're going to introduce a new tax. I want some of your revenue. I want you to do a licensing thing. I want you to charge HST. I want to participate in your business endeavor. A lot of people went that way to avoid the Landlord Tenant Board. It opened up new taxation. Fast forward, now the government's saying, if you're in a municipality that does not govern or require licensing for short-term rental, well, guess what? All your expenses that are related to that investment, they're not deductible. If you don't know what that means, it just takes away a lot, well, almost all of the benefit from owning real estate over any other asset class. If you borrow money to buy real estate, which a lot of people do, you can no longer write off the cost of borrowing that money against the income. So you're going to gain every single year, which means you're going to pay even more taxes every single year. Not the case with any other investment. So short-term rentals are the boogeyman. If you decided as a landlord, you're going to react to this imbalance in the Landlord and Tenant Board issue, specifically in Ontario, and you went short-term rental to avoid this awful administration that's happening on the Landlord Tenant Board, and there's no rights and the complete violation of landlord rights on that side. If you decided to limit your exposure to that by going short-term rental, now what they're saying is, oh, okay, so when you changed your use of your property from long-term to short-term rental, so it's a change in use. So now that has to be earmarked. There's going to be a taxable gain, theoretically, on that. Though there was no sale, you might have to pay taxes when you converted that property. So now you are la-di-da, you're doing a short-term rental, and the government changes the rules, more taxes, more taxes, more taxes. You're like, hey, hang on a second. This short-term rental thing isn't all it's cracked up to be. There's a lot of taxation. There's no deductions. I'm not in for this. I want to go back to the long-term rental game. This is where the biggest kicker is. Going back from short-term rental back to long-term rental, another deemed sale as if you had sold a property. So you're selling the property back to yourself. You're not. But now they're charging you HST on that purchase. They're charging you HST. They continue to find ways to pull money, taxation, from people that own properties. I am not okay with this. You can't possibly be okay with this if you really take a step back and understand how this is all playing out. Many people believe all of this has to do with they're trying to figure out ways to make capital gains on your principal residence, on your properties, fully taxable all over again. And these are just small things that are adding up to really large numbers to find ways to tax you on your property in Canada. That's not going to be good for any property owners in Canada or any investment in Canada.